Yeah, I don't know. I always have trouble with going live on Facebook, but I think I can go live on Zoom and then put the link on Facebook, at least for now, just to. Okay, that's live.
Probably got about an hour. I got to pick up the kid at 2:20, so
Okay,
I probably need to leave here
okay,
about 2:10. It's
okay,
2:10. It's 1:10 my time, so we got at least an hour.
okay. We're gonna wait an hour. Okay, we'll wrap it up in about. We'll wrap it up in an hour.
Live
That's
on YouTube.
yeah. There we go. Um, and record. All right, let's do it. Okay, I am here with Cedric Knight. We're recording, and he is, well, let me allow him to introduce himself. He is a Pentecostal preacher, sort of like I was back in the day, a little bit, uh, which is a little aside of myself that sometimes I talk about, sometimes I don't. And well, I mentioned that because sometimes I have people from religious backgrounds on my podcast, but even if it's a Christian background or whatever, it's not exactly um, the same thing that I had been involved in. But what Cedric is involved in is very, very similar to mine. He's from Louisville, Kentucky. And yeah, I just want to get to know him and we'll talk about a few things. He's pretty passionate about the political process. So we'll talk about that a little bit and a few other things. Cedric, what's up? Tell us about yourself and
What's going on, man?
hey,
Well,
hey.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
I really appreciate it. I know it's been some time coming. I know we've been
Yeah.
talking about this for quite some time. Say, hey, we're supposed to be getting together, doing a video,
Hmm.
going live. So thank you for inviting me to the show
Yeah.
today. Just kind of recapping what you kind of talked about, a little bit about myself. I'm married. I have 4 children.
Wow.
I played basketball. Most people think I play football because I'm a big guy, but I played basketball in high school.
Wow.
Graduated from college. Got a full ride scholarship to a Division I scholarship in Bloomington, Illinois, which
Wow.
was the school was called Illinois State
Hmm.
University. Then I decided to come back home and play for Coach Rick Pitino as a walk on
Wow.
in 2000. But being the guy I I was very adamant about not living for God. So I
Hmm.
went up for a rebound doing a individual instruction with Coach Patino, came down, broke my foot, ended my career, became disabled, had 4 major foot surgeries. So that's kind of was some of the bad stuff
Wow.
that's happened to me. But kind
Hmm.
of going back to, my family, some
Hmm.
of the bad things that's happened to me. I grew up in a Catholic church. I
Okay.
went to a private school
Hmm.
up until the 8th grade. So it was
Hmm.
definitely spiritual stuff that I dealt with,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
never could put it together.
Right. Right.
And then I went to 8th grade public school, and what I found out about life was just kind of mind blowing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
became Baptist for between when I was 13 to 20 something years old. And then I was introduced to the Pentecostal faith,
Mm.
kind of what you made mention of.
Yeah. Yeah.
With that, I was actually looking for a wife. After I finished drinking and smoking and doing all the dumb stuff that I could do, anything I could get my hands on. I actually read a book by Tommy Nelson, Love, Intimacy, Relationship, and I was looking for a wife, and I was looking for more, some type of experience with God. And since then, I met my wife, and she kind of introduced me to the Pentecostal movement, Acts 2:38, being baptized in Jesus' name, filled with the Holy Ghost. So
Yeah.
that's kind of who I am, and what I stand for, and yeah, that's Cedric Knight.
Wow, that was a good introduction. um, wow, that's a lot. So you're a little bit older than myself. I always get confused. Like I'm like, well, how does he have 4 kids and all this? Because uh, I'm 38, but you look young. You look like 10 years younger than I am, or probably
Oh,
yourself.
well, thank you, man. I'm 38 myself, so
Oh, you are? Okay, okay. All right. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
you just went through school, and then wow, you got in the. What was it like to? So did you actually play for Rick Pitino, or you started that and
So,
then didn't
so
work out with your foot surgery?
like with anytime you transfer from a Division I school, you have to
Oh,
sit out a year.
right, right,
So it
right.
was during my red shirt year, but
Mm,
I was on the team and everything. I broke my foot in a individual
mm,
instruction with Coach Rick Pitino.
wow.
So yeah, I mean I was good enough to make the team,
Wow, yeah.
but my body said otherwise. You're not going to be playing basketball. So
Right, right, right. Sounds like
yeah.
a big learning experience anyway.
Yeah, and if we get to that part, I can kind of tell you what gate or what portal I opened up for that to happen. When I,
Well, well,
we'll
sure.
let them.
You mentioned it. Why don't you just tell us right now, at least
Well,
briefly?
when I like I said when I was about more of a Baptist church,
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't know about the spiritual realm, the
Mm-hmm.
demonic systems, and all this.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it all through my life in Catholic school. I was like, I always, especially when I smoked weed, I always felt like somebody
Yeah.
was looking at me. I was
Mm-hmm.
like,
I know what you mean.
somebody's here. So paranoia,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, through the Catholic faith and also in the Baptist faith, I was living in sin. Watching porn and doing everything that I could do, right?
Being a
Chasing all
young
the
man.
females.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, being a young man. So what happened was this girl that I don't know if I slept with her or not, but I can't remember. But
Almost 20
she
years ago.
introduced me. I know, right? She
Yeah. Yeah.
introduced me to a guy named Baba. She's
Okay.
like, because I was, and Baba was a enchantment, I guess a warlock, and he read palms and
What?
different stuff like that. So I
Wow.
was like, yeah, I'm curious about, knowing about my future. And I didn't really
Sure.
know any better, right? So
This is when you're in
we went in
college.
this, yeah, in college.
Okay.
This is before I broke my foot. So I went in
Okay.
the basement with this guy. His name is Baba. He's like sitting in this, like, can you imagine like an African guy with all this, just, have you seen Constantine? You seen that movie Constantine, right? Um,
I don't think so, but
okay.
I'm getting
All
the
right.
image.
so,
Like a big
so,
black guy being like a witch or a shaman or
yeah,
something
pretty much, right? Yeah, yeah, enchantment type stuff,
in a
warlock. So
basement
I'm like,
in Kentucky. Okay.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. So I go down there. I'm like, okay, and he's like, yeah. He's just kind of staring at me. We kind of having a conversation. But the distinctive thing that I remember is him
Mm,
reading my palm. So he was
okay.
like, he took my palm and told me how many kids I was going to have, and I was going to be this, this, and this. And I felt an unease at that point. I was like, man,
Mm.
like something
How
like
many kids
is
did he
on
say,
me.
by the way?
He said two. So he's like,
Okay, he was
he
wrong
said,
then.
look at these. Yeah, he's definitely wrong. He's like, yeah, you're gonna have two kids. One's gonna be real tall because of my. I'm like, okay, but not knowing that I opened myself up to
Mm.
that spiritual realm.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's when I found out. It was like 2 weeks later. That's when I, pretty much ended my career, and a lot of bad things
Wow.
happened to me at
Hmm.
that point in my life. 4 major foot surgeries, became disabled.
Wow.
It was just bad. So I knew then that opened myself up in agreement with the
Hmm.
demonic force. So yeah, that's kind of what happened. With my foot. So
That's that's intense. Okay.
yeah.
And then by the way, since we're still somewhat in the introduction, you how we kind of speak on Facebook sometimes is you're very involved in the political scene, at least the Facebook political scene, for whatever that's worth.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
how did that side of yourself come about? uh, the
Um,
political side.
as you know, I am a conservative. I didn't
Mm,
become a conservative until after I voted for Barack Obama twice.
Mhm.
Not knowing what I was voting for, I was voting mainly for skin color. Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
he's the first African American president. Of course, I'm gonna support it, but not knowing what I was supporting and signing myself up to. So
Mhm.
during a dark time in my life, a liberal part in my life,
Mhm.
I just thought any and everything was okay to do. There's no standards, there's no instruction from God. It was just like live life, right?
Right.
So when I started getting myself together, I started looking at the political spectrum across the board. What I so-called a Democrat supposed to believe in, and
Mhm.
then I lined it up with the scriptures.
Yeah.
Just saw a lot of things that didn't really line up. So yeah, that kind of got me involved with the political piece,
Mhm.
and I just really started digging in, just understanding the history, and then also looking at when I was under Barack Obama,
Mhm.
I couldn't find a job. I
Mhm.
struggled as an African American, and it was tough. So I feel now obligated to tell people
Right.
we must more or less become independent,
Right. Right.
if anything, to determine what's going to be best, not just for African Americans, but just for Americans as a whole. And I'm really passionate about things that are taking place with our current president.
Right. Right.
He's done a phenomenal job. I don't vote on personality,
Right.
but I vote on policy now.
Right.
So I just educate myself, and try to get that information out, that factual information.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say sometimes when I get into a little bit of political talks here, I sound or might even say that I am uh, libertarian, but I would say I am what I think everybody should be, which is independent. Meaning,
Absolutely.
there's going to be some good and bad on any and all of the parties,
Absolutely.
and we
Right.
should, uh, when we vote, when we participate in the political process, even just political discussion, we should do so, like you said, based on what they say, what they've done, what the plans are, what's going on in the world. But both sides, and the liberal or the Democrat side, they do have some good intentions, we'll say, but where I
Absolutely.
think it's gotten lost a lot of times, especially in our lifetime, is kind of get swept up in this group mentality, or just kind of like, if it feels good, do it, or less about policies and more about whatever is popular. And then especially, of course, there is a time to think in terms of uh, your group or your background, but we don't want to only think in terms of our ethnic background or our anything in our past or our background, because we're voting for the future, and we're voting for people that are going to change the world based um, on values and morals and principles. And that is, for lack of a better word, colorblind. you know Anybody
Right.
can put forth good policies and vote well and do well, whether they're black, white, yellow, or orange.
Absolutely.
So
Right. Right.
uh,
Right.
and again, it's something that you and I talk about a bit online, is how there's this narrative, and it can it's kind of this herd or group or mass narrative, especially in the mass media, which is um, minorities need to think and vote a certain way. And then I, and this is where I get stuck, because sometimes it feels like I can't even speak as a cisgender heterosexual white male, that
Right. Right.
I have, if I'm going to, I have to either go in and like be all this like BLM, minorities are victims of white people, and I'm gonna like help as a white person. I'm going to help minorities just by humiliating myself and talking about how horrible white people are all the time. And then if I don't do that, not just by not doing that, then I'm the enemy.
Correct.
But I don't know. Maybe you can speak a little bit more into how you feel a bit as a minority, because I know that's something you talk a bit about, and also how it gets into free speech, which is like a big, value of what we talk about here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very compact question. I'll try to.
Yeah.
But first of all, I kind of want to address the piece where you talked about the Democratic Party and the right and the left, and there are some good things that the Democrats have done, just like the pre-existing conditions with what Obama passed. I'm grateful for him passing where I work for a corporation and I'm able to take 8 weeks off for paternity leave. So, I mean, just little stuff like that. There was some HUD stuff. I mean, so there are some good things, like you said. But I think more or less where I kind of have drawn the line, me being a minister and man of the scriptures, just the morality and different things that I disagree on. Talking about that standard that you made mention of, that's going to be placed forth in the future, right? Because we are making those decisions. But what is that standard, and how, if we don't have that standard of some type of boundaries or guidelines, how does that tip us into a different type of world in the future? In regards to, the children and adults having, sexual relations, and just a lot of things that can go astray if we don't have those boundaries. So that's kind of, on that piece. And, in talking about you being a heterosexual white man, you almost have become the enemy of the state, especially if you're a Christian. A Christian heterosexual white man is considered now white supremacy, and that you don't like black people. And, I don't subscribe to that narrative. And the reason I don't, because I should not project what I believe onto you. And you shouldn't project what you believe onto me. That's we no longer individuals, but now we have collective thinking. And then when I think about collective thinking as African Americans, that's what we do on the how you know I'm a conservative on the Democratic Party. We have a collective thought process, and what they say and what they know what's best for the Negro, has Joe Biden said. That's not necessarily what's best. But we are dealing with where you can't necessarily speak out or have a different opinion outside the particular narrative of you being a heterosexual white guy that's not subscribing to Marxism and socialism and things like that. You don't have to stand. You don't have to agree with it. But I always like to point this out. If a white person does come and tell me that I'm a victim, yes, we have had bad history in America with slavery and voting rights and KKK. All those things are true. And things will continue to get better. But when we've elected when we've elected a black president twice, which means we only make up 13% of the population African American. So the rest of it is pretty much white. So you tell me all these Caucasian people voted a black man to be the most powerful man in the world for 8 years. So I believe that we, with our freedom of speech, we should be able to have differences, but also agree on certain things. But I think we just have to meet halfway. And I don't think sometimes even the right people on the right, they just so far right. And I've had to delete people on Facebook and like, dude, you way far right, dude. Like you have no moral compass at all. So.
And it almost feels like it didn't used to be this way, even just growing up. And so I'm glad that we can relate, being the same age, which, that's part of my point too, is that I like to be able to just be like, oh, cool, we have some things in common. We have similar values. That's the way you and I have had, conversations on the phone and online, whatever else, where it's, and okay, I've heard some people make this point from Sam Harris, or I don't know if it was his original idea, that says your skin color or your ethnic background should be the least interesting thing about you. And I sort of see what they're saying and what they're getting at, but I think that should still be like an interesting thing. Like it should be like, oh, interesting. You have this background, whether it's black, white, or whatever background, not just black, but whether that's Southern black, Jamaican, whether that's a white person from the Midwest, the East, whatever. It's like your cultural background is an interesting thing, but it's not your full identity. And it's not like because you or I are a certain thing that we have to have a certain dynamic in our relationship or our friendship. Like I was saying, I can just come to you and be like, okay, we're cool. We're the same age. We have, we have similar values and somewhat of a similar religious background. We have similar values in the way that we look at certain things in politics, and then we can just be people. But yeah, a lot of the popular narrative, and again, it didn't used to be this way. It used to just like when up until, I don't know, the past, maybe it became a big thing leading into the last couple elections, even 2012, where, because I feel like even when Barack Obama became president in 2008, people weren't even looking at that as like, yeah, it was a historic thing, cool, but it was kind of just like, oh yeah, he makes sense as a political person. He's popular, he's eloquent, all those things. And plus it's like usually the incumbent will win on the to complete an 8-year term, and then usually it switches every 8 years. So it's just like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Barack Obama, the Democratic nominee. I mean, if they didn't make that deal, Hillary probably could have won that year, and then whatever else Barack Obama probably could have won later. So even in 2008, it didn't seem like it was a big deal, at least in the culture that I was seeing then. And then I feel like after that, these huge weird narratives like we're talking about became a thing. And it's like, if somebody wants to kind of have that belief, that's one thing, but to impose it on everybody, like to make me feel awkward or you feel awkward or anything else, that we can't just have conversations and continue the free speech process based on anything other than things like skin color and all that. So and again, one of the things that I wanted to kind of get into is this idea of whether it's the mainstream media or politics, it feels, I mean, there hasn't been any laws specifically imposed against free speech, although there is some in the corporate powers on Facebook deleting anything even remotely. Like now certain corporations, especially in the speech department, are more powerful than the government, and if you say anything remotely against even a joke that makes Biden look bad, it immediately gets deleted. And they say, false information, but the false information that they say doesn't even make sense. And then, of course, you can say anything that makes the orange man look bad. So it's a weird place that we're at in terms of free speech, because it's like Facebook and YouTube and these corporations have kind of taken over the speech department. So that's, especially this year, the main way that people are communicating. So I don't know, how do you feel in terms of free speech these days, especially as a guy who's very involved on Facebook and things?
Yeah, I mean, I first started out with social media as a whole. One of the reasons why Barack Obama was able to win the election in 2008 and 12 was due to social media, the platform itself. the platform where it was able to engage people, get information out quicker, not
Yeah, yeah.
necessarily just looking at newspapers. So it changed the whole landscape. I remember Obama even sending
Right.
out text alerts where you can donate $10. Everyone had $10, so
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Just I think the technology as a whole allowed the push for Obama, or at that particular time, to win not only the nominee but also, like you said, the incumbents, for 8 years at a time. So
Right.
social media has been huge ever since then.
Right, right.
But never they see where they was going to have to store, kind of reeling that information back in as a whole, especially
Hmm.
after Hillary Clinton did not win in 2016, where everyone said that she was going to win. And now
Right.
you have someone in office like Trump
Right.
that's guys like me and you just sitting down at the kitchen table talking
Yeah,
stuff, me and
regular
my dad
guys.
talking stuff like, Dad, man, these taxes are killing me. Dad, why we got jobs over in China and I see these
Right, right.
homeless people and we struggling. Dad, why ain't we taking care of our farmers?
Hmm.
Those are the type of conversations that,
Right.
I believe that, that encompass who Trump is.
Hmm.
So when we think about, the freedom of speech,
Right,
that's
right.
what I'm finding now. The same ones that put a lot of power, like Obama, into place,
Hmm.
um, is now trying to reel it in. And when we think about Adolf Hitler, propaganda, right? When we
Hmm.
think about
Yep.
communists, propaganda, all
Right,
throughout
right, right.
history, you use propaganda, use the news media to push out a false narrative, a big illusion into what I want you to believe, which is a delusion over the
Right,
truth.
right, right.
And a lot of people would, they just go along with it and believe,
Yep.
oh, that's fake. That's fake. I was having a conversation with my wife yesterday, and I showed her a video of Dr. Fauci on 60 Minutes, saying that, hey, there's no really need for masks, and you fiddling with it and
Yeah.
this, and this. And I
Yeah.
heard her talking to her girlfriend, which is a liberal,
Yeah.
and my wife said something to her. It's like, yeah, my husband showed me a video of Dr. Fauci, talking about we shouldn't wear masks, and immediately what she said, that's fake news. I'm like, what? I'm like, I have the video. So this is a lot of people have the
Mm.
concept of when they hear certain, I guess, speaking points, they
Yeah, yeah.
immediately jump into fake news. But
Yeah.
the freedom of speech is definitely something that I think we're going to be up against. That's why we have Parler now.
Right, right.
Um, you know, there was an instance even recently with Twitter,
Hmm.
when the White House press secretary
Yeah, yeah.
tweeted out the story on Biden. They immediately suspended her account. They
Yeah.
didn't want that information out. So it's a different time, man, that we're living in. And we, like you said, we can't say certain things without getting dinged. That's why I don't necessarily mention who I work for and specific things on a social media platform,
Right,
because
right.
somebody can screenshot something, about how I feel about whatever, and take it to my boss or whatever. So I just have to be careful too.
Well, see, and that it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that really takes it to another level, where it's one thing, and I can't think of all the specific examples, but there are some, at least with some of the bigger companies like Google. Although I don't know if that was more related. I think that was more related to equality and diversity training and some issues that he had. But certain things where people are getting fired, losing their jobs just
Mm-hmm.
because they are a certain
Conservatives.
political leaning or whatever. Again, talking like we're old people, but when I was coming up, when I remember just like 10 years ago and before, where the whole political scene was just looked at as almost like a hobby, or almost like just
Exactly.
something
Right.
that, like, if you're involved in it, then that's cool or cute or whatever. uh, and and people would totally respect if uh, if you're conservative or liberal or independent or whatever
Mm-hmm.
else. Then it's like, cool, that's almost like being
Right.
a Laker fan or a Bulls fan. Good for you, But now it's like,
Right.
I don't, and I just don't get all this animosity behind. It's like, especially when the and it's hard to figure out where it's coming from, and it might just be because people are actually doing so well in the last few years that they don't have anything to put their like anxiety on. You know, like in the last at least since we've sort of recovered from the 2008 recession, we don't really have
Mm-hmm.
something to say we've got a problem because of war or, you know, economic collapse or
Right.
anything. And then this
Right.
year when we have a little bit of that, but it's more biological than anything else, you know,
Right.
we don't really have
No
somebody
pun.
to blame. Yeah. So yeah,
Right.
I don't know where it all comes from. It used to be a lot different. So I don't know. What do you think as far as where all this
I,
anxiety and
I think.
angst and yeah, go ahead.
Well, I would say first of all, I think we, coming back to one of your first original questions,
Yeah.
we should look at the character of the individual, his intellect, his character.
Right. Right.
How
Right.
is he as a human being versus
Right.
the color?
Right.
And I
Right.
think that's a part of the quote that I wanted to, kind of touch on.
Right. Right.
And we have lost the compassion towards one another in their
Mm.
differences, in
Right.
their
Right.
skin colors, in their beliefs, political, religious, because we have one group that is trying to literally shape and mold us to the globalist thought process. One world religion, everyone
Right.
think
Right.
the
Right.
same, kumbaya, and has me being a minister. Every human being is corrupt. I'm corrupt. You're
Right.
corrupt. No one is
Right.
perfect.
Right.
We are imperfect people. So
Mm.
when we say that we have the solution, we necessarily don't.
Right. Right.
But when we're thinking about the animosity that has been built up, I do believe that there might have been people that it was upset that it was the first African American president, and I know the Republicans, Mitch McConnell was really hard on Obama because he probably saw or knew. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. You're fine.
Okay, all right. It sounded like my AirPods might die on me, but
You're fine.
he was really tough on Obama. So I don't know if that animosity
Mm.
and the notion that Obama had a lot of trouble doing certain things as the first African American,
Yeah.
a lot of resentment started to build up. That's what I see. Dude, I mean, you have a Congress, you have the Senate, you can do anything you want. It wasn't like you didn't have the power. So I think a lot of the animosity started, a lot more of it started, and then on top of it,
Mm.
social media being there. So when we think about having people having a lot of time on their hands, I do believe a lot of
Yeah.
people do have a lot of time on their hands to cause hatred and different things like that. But it's not going to get better. I would say we can if I was voted a particular way,
Mm.
they can't fix it. We can't fix it. And it's just the way
Yeah.
it is. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
humankind.
Like all these narratives of like, okay, the whole birther thing was a bit of drama more than anything. With
Mm-hmm.
people, especially the orange man challenging where Obama
Yeah.
was
He's bad man.
born.
Right.
Um, that was just so. I mean, like, okay, even Mitt Romney. I'm not a Mitt Romney supporter necessarily, but there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
question if he was born in Mexico because his family were
Really.
ministers in Mexico at the time. So there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
question if Mitt Romney was born in America or not. So
Mm-hmm.
it would be natural that whoever the person is, are we going to abide by the rules of the land regardless of skin color, or and then it would be normal whether that it's Obama or Romney or whoever else. Just you know, give us let us know that we're abiding by the rules that says he has to be born in America, and then that's fine. If he's born in Hawaii or
Mm-hmm.
wherever else, cool, great. That's by the rules. And so yeah, it's just a weird narrative that goes the whole way down. Um, and I think all it does is it's just that we have these insecurities as human beings because um, that goes into like our lowest base nature of we're all capable of those horrible things. We're all capable of
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Mm-hmm. I know I am.
yeah, every single human being is capable of some kind of racism, some kind of maybe
biases.
biases, would have done those horrible things that we feel horrible about in our history. Perhaps if we were in that place, uh, sometimes we'd be like, oh no, I would never ever, whatever, have a slave, do this or that. But we're all capable of that, and just that knowledge that we're all capable of that,
Mm-hmm.
it makes a really bad insecurity that we have to cover that up. And but I don't know, it feels like me more than anything impeding on our ability to think and have free speech, even if it's just imposed by the culture and the media, not just the government.
Right. No, and I think it's important, like, even like, as far as if you're a white person, you should want to learn about different cultures and different things like that. And I think it's good to learn about, the African American culture, where we like chitlins, and I don't know if you ever heard of
okra and Kool-Aid.
Oh, right, exactly. So I would tell anybody that possibly listening, get to know an African American and the cultures, and even though if you're liberal or even if you're conservative, that helps to build that character, or it helps you to learn the character of that person. They have different upbringings, and you can start to look at your specific prejudices or biases. When I say racist because you just hate someone because of their skin color. Prejudices, we all have prejudices. We all have biases. When I see a particular type of guy sagging his pants and showing his booty hole, that's the type of guy I don't want to be around, right? I'm not going to hang with you because most other guys probably think I'm, whatever. So, so I do have those biases. I do have, certain inherited prejudices, and we all do. So I think if you take a look at those particular things and just process them, I think we all be better. But anytime that I have particular biases, and I'm telling you, you have the same ones, and you need to fix it before I fix myself. And I think that's where we are at right now as a society. Even you as a white guy, people like, okay, if you don't agree with the Black Lives Matter movement, then you're a racist. You're against black people. And I know that's not.
The worst thing about that, and it almost gets into this free speech idea, is that, of course, there's going to be aspects of a movement like that most people will agree with. And, like, of course, we can all agree Black Lives Matter. But what's really toxic is the fact that we can't even just in the conversation of it say, yeah, well, but all lives matter, right? Then as soon as you say that,
lives matter, right?
Yeah, all Black Lives Matter and all lives in general matter and everything else, then all of a sudden, just to say I agree or I agree but, then all of a sudden I'm the enemy. And then even if you do the same thing as a
I'm not black.
Yeah. So again, it's this
no
weird thing of free speech where it's like, can't we even just have conversations about these, nuanced debates?
Absolutely. Yeah, and those are the points that I bring up that really picks people off. Is like, okay, Black Lives really matter. Then why are all these quote unquote police shootings happening in Democratic-led cities? That I really do pin that down on them. Don't say it's happening in particular one. So you telling me we voting for this particular leadership, we voting for the Democratic Party leaders, but you not fixing the systematic racism as you portray that exists, within society. And also another thing that I always bring up. We make up 13% of all population in America, and we do 53% of all criminal activity. So there has to be some type of a barrier that officers, black and white officers, has to have when we, as my African American community, is committing 53% of all crimes in America. Not negating the fact that I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or anything like that. But we, as I've told people, we have to look at ourselves as not only the church,
Mm,
But where's the fathers at? Why aren't the fathers bringing these children up and teaching them
mm,
how to live and be respectful? So when I hear Black Lives Matter, I'm like, hold on, what about when we talk about killing each other? When we hear these rappers and we hear Cardi B, WAP,
right, right, right,
wet,
right.
wet, wet, what,
Yeah.
P.
Yeah,
That's you telling my daughter
yeah,
that
yeah,
that's
yeah.
most important to her. That's a character flaw.
Right, right, right.
And then also when we hear rappers rapping about, oh, I'm gonna shoot this and I'm gonna sell this, do
Right,
whatever.
right,
He's
right,
not
right.
talking about either. He's not talking about shooting you,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Yeah, he's talking about shooting other African Americans, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
when I hear Black Lives Matter, I'm just like, all Black Lives Matter, at that
Mm,
point. But again, I think the messaging of the three women that started it,
yeah.
where they are against the heterosexual black male figure in the household, they want to empower and
Yeah,
remove
just
that.
destroy the
Uh,
nuclear family.
yeah, exactly. Destroy the nuclear fire. So all those things that I've done research on versus just
Yeah.
listening to a narrative from Don Lemon, a black
Mm,
guy that's married to a white guy, right? I'm supposed to listen to that. So no, I just do my own research
yeah.
and come up with my own conclusion. So it's
Y-
and
And
when
it,
you don't agree, it's
mm,
okay because
right, right.
I believe you know more of the truth. So
Yeah, and it's a really strange narrative because, like, okay, I live close to LA and I've spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, and the mayor, Eric Garcetti, he came out a couple months ago with the whole movement, and
mhm.
he's like, okay, we're gonna somewhat defund the police by taking away certain funding, and we're going to move it to programs that are going to empower minorities and women, especially women of color, and all this. When it's
Mhm.
like, all you have to do to know that's complete and total BS is
Right.
something that I've done a number of times just living in the area. Go drive downtown Los Angeles, drive one block over, and then drive 2 miles south. The reason is because downtown, where it has been, and it's known forever that the development of Los Angeles happens by bribes. People are always getting caught by the city council members are always getting caught by the FBI. That what happens in terms of Los Angeles development is just done by under the table bribes. So uh, when you go from Grand Street to where it's like made of gold almost, one block over to Olive where it's crackheads walking around all over the place, mostly
Mhm.
minorities, and then you go 2 miles south where it's like South Central LA. The streets haven't been paved probably in 20, 30, 40 years. So it's like gravel
Wow.
roads like 2 miles south. So what that's
Gary
saying
Cannon.
is,
Wow.
yeah, so what it's in black neighborhoods, of course. And so what that's saying is, if they wanted to put money into uh, communities of color, just repave their streets. But it's all done by this backroom bribing and everything. And I just say that to say that it's just these BS narratives, and it's really sad that people are taken up in it and will go along with it. And the
Absolutely.
only reason that they go along with it is because if you say, well, I'm not sure about that because of just driving around a few miles radius or whatever, then all of a sudden, at least me as a person of whatever white male, I am the enemy for saying I'm not necessarily agreeing with helping minorities, when I'm just saying, well, like let's look at the narrative and let's look at the past and what's really going on. So
Right.
I don't know. It's different. It's different for everybody. It's just a dangerous
That,
narrative game that we're playing.
yeah, that's horrible, man. Thank you for sharing that with me. It hurts my heart, man. That
Yeah.
that we say that white liberals really do care about minorities, and
Mm,
minorities are suffering in that
mm.
capacity, and as if they don't have access to funds or doing stuff like
Right.
that.
Right.
That's definitely trouble. I'm not saying that the Republicans are 20 times better, but just
Right,
just
right.
the overall piece where that's bad. That's not good.
Yeah, and I don't know. We might transition. Didn't mean to
Yeah,
be on politics
yeah,
for that long, but it was also partly
all right,
a free speech issue. Um, but and you mentioned a little bit too how, and I feel like the narrative has also changed in our lifetime. You talk about growing up in a variety of religious backgrounds and changing that over time. But definitely in the 90s and early 2000s, it was just normal that you could be any kind of Christian, and it's just like, okay, cool, that's your thing. And now
absolutely.
it's so weird that you, Christians are kind of looked at as like crazy people in today's world, and it's hard to even have a
Yeah,
conversation with most people
sure,
just about like, hey, this is my faith, this is something that has been very helpful and powerful and beneficial to me in different ways over the years.
absolutely.
uh,
Right.
so I don't know, that's another narrative issue. And I don't know, what has your experience been like that over the 20 something years, or most of your life being involved in religion and seeing that
Yeah,
sort
I
of
mean, yeah,
change in the narrative?
yeah, the uptick. Yeah, I think the uptick is definitely different now. It has an
Mm,
uptick where they look at Christians as radicals, or like you
mm,
said, talking to a man in the sky or whatever,
yeah,
as
yeah.
they say.
Hmm.
But I mean, I think everyone has some type of religion.
Yeah,
Either
yeah.
yourself, you believe only in yourself,
Right,
and what or Satanism, Buddha, or whatever. Someone
mm,
believes in something,
right.
but you
Whatever's
might
your
not
highest
know what
value.
you
Yeah.
believe in. Right, whatever, exactly, or whoever you think created themselves.
Mm,
But no, I think it's changing because we do stand for righteousness. We do stand for certain things, and then when
right.
certain people won't get us to conform to their thought process or their evolving worldview, then they look at us as the enemy. They don't look at Muslims or any other religion
Right.
like they do with us. For what that reason? We know, from a spiritual standpoint, there's going to be persecution, all these different things.
Hmm.
But I always challenge people: can a watch make itself? No, you have to have a watchmaker. Can time form itself? No, you have to have a time maker.
Hmm.
I do believe that the uptick in attacks on us is
Hmm.
biblical. It's going to happen,
Right, right,
and
right.
we're not necessarily going out and hating people, or even like with homosexuals or gays. We don't, I don't go out and like just bashing
Yeah.
bashing people, right?
Right, right,
But
right.
they make it seem like we're discriminating against those people. And I have gays in my family.
Yeah.
There's like we have a transsexual that goes to one of the churches. So we don't
Hmm.
necessarily we're not as bad as people think we are. But I think that's from the natural side. But from the spiritual side, the things that we teach from the
Hmm.
spiritual realm is more or less of a witness against those individuals that have other religions, such as themselves, because they believe a certain way. But we will be attacked, it's just going to happen.
Yeah, and it almost fits into this category of like this intersectionalism, where I mentioned myself as a heterosexual cisgender white male, whatever else,
Hmm.
where there's these all these power things that means if
Hmm.
I have these things that are more in power, then I am oppressing those who are in not
Absolutely. Yeah.
power, where that religion isn't necessarily on that official list, if there is an official list of power versus those who are oppressed. But it seems that same way as far as this postmodern narrative that Christians have been sort of like the predominant in power imperialist religion for so many hundreds or thousands of years. So um, Judeo Christians, especially, are the enemy because they represent power and a lot of these things. So it kind of seems in that same category, like these other things that we've been talking about, where, like you mentioned, people don't challenge Muslims so much, and it's like, oh, cool, you're a Muslim, that's great. Where maybe we need to have those nuanced conversations, maybe even debates or discussions, but everything needs to be challenged based on its value and its merit, not just its position of power in the world and of history. Yeah. So I don't know. Have you seen that aspect or felt that aspect, that it's just because the Christian faith has been in power for so long that people feel challenged by it?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the scripture. I mean, now we can kind of talk about some of the scripture, I guess, at this point,
Sure.
instead of the natural.
Yeah.
But the scripture says that he will confound the wise. He will make the wise man a fool. To the Greek, the gospel is foolish. To the Jew, I forgot exactly what it said, but what that means is, you telling me that God himself wrapped himself in flesh and he came and died for our sins, that's foolish to me. So they look at us as, you think some man in the sky, and we have the only religion that atones for our sins, a perfect man.
Right.
So it's a witness. So when we're thinking about this uptick attack, it's all about souls. Every individual is a soul, a living, breathing soul. We are made up of triune beings. We talked about that, I think, maybe before. Made up of spirit, which is your conscious, your intuition, and the man's spirit. There's three parts in the spirit, in the man's spirit. Then we made up our soul, right? With our emotions, our intellect, and our will, our decision making, and then we made up the flesh, our five senses, where we feel, taste, smell, all those. So God came and saved us, and it's foolish to most people because we won't look at ourselves as sinners. And as we see in society, we see all this sin, we see all this hatred, we see all this animosity, we see all these things. But we have the simplest message of salvation in faith towards God through the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Right.
So that simple message aggravates people. That simple message ticks people off. But Muslims or Buddha or whatever other religion,
atheists even,
atheists, where that's, I mean, atheism is a religion. That's what I look at as a religion.
Yeah.
And it just comes down to, we're going to attack that simple message because they are simple-minded. They don't have the capacity or the I guess, let me see the word I'm looking for, the intellectual capacity to understand what we believe and what we understand. So that's why I feel like there's an attack, and it's okay. I mean, it biblically says it's going to happen. But overall, we accept it. All we can do is just move on. But it's not going to get better, in so many words. And let me say this: a lot of division happens also within our own ranks, within our own Christian brothers and sisters. And one thing that Satan hates is unity. He does not like unity. And I believe that a lot of this division, even in America or even in our nation, somewhat started in the church systems. So.
Yeah, and it just seems that it's hard to have these conversations nowadays. It used to be normal, I believe, 10 plus years ago, where excuse me, you could have a nuanced conversation of, this is my faith, this is what I believe, it might be different, and here's what you believe, no big deal. But now it just seems so hard to say. It's just blown off as, it didn't used to be this way, but now it's just blown off as, that's stupid, nobody believes in that anymore. It's just not popular. Yeah, and it's just not in the mainstream narrative anymore. So it's hard to even have these conversations. It used to just be fun to, or just interesting and educational, that we could have these deep conversations with anybody regardless of their background or whatever type of
Right.
religion. And now, for the most part, people aren't even willing to have these uh, discussions like they used to, or at least not in sort of like the
Mm-hmm.
mainstream. So it's
Absolutely.
been a shift just in the last 10 or so years. Uh,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so I don't
Yeah.
is that something you've seen too, as far as a shift in the culture and in your lifetime,
Oh
especially as a
yeah.
minister?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really starts with the parenting. I can kind of speak to my generation, or even my culture, the African American community.
Right, right.
My sisters, my sister was she like 45 ish, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. So that whole generation necessarily didn't go to church or believe in
Right,
church.
right.
So there was some foundational things that were not set. So now my sister has 4 kids, 4 different baby daddies, and now you have another
Mm.
generation of 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 individuals that don't want God, that don't need God, that doesn't have a structure for God. And you have a
Mm.
generation after generation after generation becoming disobedient. Anytime you become disobedient, you become distant from God, and you become desperate for God.
Right,
And
right.
that's what I'm seeing, at least within our community. But again, I can't blame those people, but I blame some of the leadership. I blame some of those things. So what I see generationally,
Mm.
it's going to get worse. And
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think government can fix it, but it has to be more or less
Right,
on an individual level for someone to
right,
want to
right, right.
seek truth. And if they want to seek truth, then they can open up the scriptures, go to certain ministries. But also within those ministries, you're going to find a lot of different differences of beliefs. Like I'm Pentecostal. You're going to have
Mm.
some, Baptist
Mm.
or Methodist.
Right, right.
But I still believe that we have a core belief, and we can still come together and have a decent conversation within our ranks. And then outside of the ranks, outside
Mm.
of people that don't believe, I still think we should be able to have that conversation. I like having conversations with respectable atheists. Like some
Yeah,
of them are
yeah.
just, those are just disrespectful, just to be hateful.
Right, 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 right.
But if because I've learned a lot from them. I learned a lot
Yeah.
from people. Someone might practice Buddha. Nothing's wrong learning and having
Mm.
a different perspective. You might not have to
Right.
believe that perspective, but I think we lost that human element, like you're saying, is
Mm.
coming together and having a dialogue or a conversation. Hey, this is what I believe. Hey, once you try this, or I might try what you experience. So,
Right, right, right.
um, but I still do believe generationally we are getting away from God, and this has become our God now.
Right.
Technology. If you think about the biblical scripture with the Tower of Babel, Nimrod, I'm sure you read it. There was certain technologies they were able to build
Right,
in
right,
order to
right.
say yes, we can. And God, you're not going to destroy the world anymore. We are on one accord. We want we're together. So that's the same system, government system or spiritual system of
Right.
technology. We have technology. We have this knowledge now,
Mm.
which replaces God. But God is the one that
And we
created everything.
created it. Yeah, we want
Right.
we want credit. Like, we
Right.
did
Right.
it.
Yeah. We
We're
created
God.
electricity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We created all the particles and the
yeah. We don't
atoms and
need
stuff
God.
like
We
that. We
figured it
did it.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Yeah. We caused the Big Bang at
yeah.
CERN. So,
Yeah, it's strange the way that those narratives get too.
yeah.
And yeah, it's
Yeah.
almost
So.
like every generation will go to one extreme and then start swinging back, like almost like the
Mm-hmm.
Gen Xers were a little bit more materialistic in some ways, but then starts quickly swinging back by the time it was the
Mm-hmm.
uh, Gen Y slash millennials that we're sort of on the borderline of, and now it's swinging back the other way a bit with the up and coming. Although this new generation, Gen Z slash whatever it is that we are now, it's more like a clash, train wreck, conglomeration, or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, we should wrap it up. So, anything else you want to add to how people might find you, and how people might join the conversation? And we'll do this again sometime in the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Facebook. if you want to.
Yeah,
You can go see what I post.
yeah.
I do have a YouTube channel, The Nightly Word. Haven't
Yeah,
posted any videos recently, but I do
yeah.
plan on doing it after the election.
Mm,
And starting in November. So yeah, follow me on my Facebook page, and on my YouTube channel, The Nightly Word. Yeah, I'm Cedric Knight, and I'm always open to have discussions or
right.
conversations with anybody. Everything's fair game. So
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I know we got into some deep stuff with only a limited amount of time today, but like I said, we'll do this again in the next few weeks. And I don't know
absolutely,
if it'll be before or after the election because that's only in 2 weeks, but probably sometime in November. But again, I really appreciate having you on and the bravery to get into some of these deep subjects. So yeah, just really appreciate it, Cedric.